Very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
Yeah, that's right. We're up bright and early, just trying to make it, look good for you. That's what we do. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
Yes, amid the cool weather, we're here to bring you some sunshine on Sunrise Daily. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
There's always last-minute touches to be made.
Absolutely.
Women, good morning and welcome. I'm Malkwe Yusuf.
Well, right. This plan that happened yesterday is not a last-minute plan. The government disbursing some 66 billion to some beneficiaries. We've spoken about what needs to be done in terms of taking care of the micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. So yesterday, they had that procedure, that meeting, a town hall, if you will. And, before that, we had also tried to take a look at the basis upon which some of these funds are disbursed because, for instance, several questions as to the authenticity of registers, how the yardstick for picking some of beneficiaries of those funds. And so much as it was Ministry of Trade and Investment, they did say that 66 billion naira had been disbursed directly, they said, to 1.26 million beneficiaries under the MSME Survival Fund and Guaranteed Offtake Scheme, including those who they say were registered under the Corporate Affairs Commission. And they went on to say that 38% of those beneficiaries were women, including 2% to people who were with people with special needs, actually. So, but wow. Now, gentlemen, funds such as these, because looking through some of this, it's, even if, yes, could be well-intended, usually well-intended, but how do we measure these kind of things in terms of the sustainability of all of these programs, such that it's not just a one-off, wherein this goes and then you can't have that multiplier effect in the economy and several other people, that chain continuing. So those are some of the areas that people just have questions regarding.
And I think it's rather interesting. You talked about the sustainability because the plan itself is the National Economic Sustainability Plan. It was meant to be a successor to the ERGP. You remember the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which elapsed, and then we had the ESP or the NESP, if you choose, which came during COVID 2020. It was meant to be a 12-month plan, 2.3 trillion naira. It was meant to be the transition plan, essentially, between the ERGP and the successor to the ERGP. So the question is, we need to actually sit down now. Well, it's not a question, maybe the demand, more like it, is to sit down and really appraise the NESP, because it came at a time when, COVID-19, a lot of people focused on the virus itself, trying to, stay safe, trying to at least maintain some sense of, some semblance of life. So there wasn't a lot of focus on maybe governance, what exactly is happening, how these funds were dispersed, who is eligible, what the funds were used for, and all of that. It's good to see this town hall, but more importantly is to ask questions and especially show records. And I think it's very important because we're at a time where, there's questions about transparency, accountability. Government needs to essentially just show how well these funds were disbursed and utilized. Some sort of audit, if you may. I would suggest that happens. Let Nigerians really know, okay, so this business was actually encouraged or was supported with this amount of money. This is what it translated to. This is what the business has been doing. Because MSMEs essentially is meant to be the life wire of our nation, Nigeria. But how far have we energized that life wire is another thing entirely. So if the NESP is coming to say, 66 billion naira.
And they said it's a 2.3 trillion naira plan that they're trying to implement to save about 1.3 or 1.6 million jobs. Yeah. So we need to look at that.
So just how, that's a lot. I was looking at the figures, 500 billion naira from special FGN account, 1.1 trillion from CBN in form of structured lending, 334 billion naira from external bilateral, multilateral sources, 309 billion from other funding sources. So it looked like we have the funding angle, at least we have a flow where the funding is coming from. But where the funding is going to, how well it is dispersed is a conversation I think the government under the ministry which this is domiciled, I think it's across passport needs to begin to have with Nigerians. Let us exactly know what this has been used for and how effective it was.
You know, you're right on point there, Coyote. You know, from an economy coming off the back of COVID, this is well intended, as Chamberlain said. You know, the economy is fledgling, so the objective is good. And I recall, you know, the time of COVID, people were walking on the streets and they were practically begging for money. It was that bad. You know, businesses were bad. There wasn't even money to buy, you know, to purchase stuff. But then again, what is the criteria for eligibility of this sustainability plan? What is the nature of businesses that are being assessed, that can access the money? Are they agro-based businesses? Are they, you know, processing industries that will encourage industrialization, or are they, you know, just normal businesses that you find, you know, within residential areas? And then, if these are the businesses that can access it, were they drawn from the 774 local government areas in the country? How fully representative is this economic sustainability plan? Well, in terms of sustainability, you know, don't forget that these entrepreneurs have to invest in, you know, the factors of production by themselves. They have to, you know, if they need water to build these businesses, they have to drill their own boreholes. There is no power supply. They have to, you know, they have to create their own means of power supply. If they rely on petrol, you know, they also have to contend with these economic indices. So, you know, sustainability really looks grim in my own opinion, albeit, you know, the points earlier made about investigating, you know, the funds that will be accessed and, you know, auditing it such that, you know, the disbursement is transparent and all of that. But these are the critical points that we must look at in terms of this economic sustainability plan. Maokwe.
Well, some people argue that perhaps it's the sustainability part of it that they are celebrating here, because it's supposed to be a fund that rolls over. But what I see here, opportunities, because I think a few other government agencies have also come under scrutiny. Take, for instance, the Bank of Industry, which had to convince people that indeed we're here to support MSMEs, or not, maybe not, at least medium and small businesses, maybe not micro, let me not add micro. And what they've done is also find a way to get the story of the people who they're supporting told. They have a specific way of intervening, and I think they only buy you equipment, etc. They hardly give cash. And then they have the stories told while at the same time giving adverts to these businesses which they're supporting. And there are lots of them in different parts of the country. They continue to advertise their numbers. But, you know, usually when there are small amounts involved, you know, a lot of questions are asked. And rightly so, too, because if we say we're disbursing something as much as 61 or 66 billion naira to small businesses, that's a lot of money, and that's a lot of people who are receiving that aid. First, we need to ask more questions as to, you know, what were they hoping to achieve? I mean, what are some of the metrics that they would use to say, you know, we have achieved some success with this intervention? What are they going to be looking at? GDP growth, for instance? Are they going to be looking at the livelihoods of those who have been supported? And then I also see like a niche for the kind of auditing for maybe specific editors, auditors, that's the word I'm looking for. I think that, you know, auditors who can specialize in something like this can actually get up, because there are lots of government agencies that are giving out aid here and there. Is it humanitarian ministry, humanitarian affairs, social development ministry is also involved in something like this. You know, they're involved in school feeding, they're involved in microcredit, they're involved in all manner of things. That entire intervention process. We have lots of poor people, but while we're trying to raise you know, a huge number out of it, there needs to be a transparent process, because a lot of people oftentimes doubt government intervention. They think it's another pipe to siphon money out of government. And because you cannot, it's almost very impossible for you to go around and start going to count 1 million people. You know, all manner of names make their way onto that register. Remember the register for the 5,000 hour intervention? I think one of the toughest jobs that the special assistant to the president as at that time had was defending how they got the names. They said they relied on a register from the World Bank, etc. So I see opportunities here, as I said, for, you know, storytellers to get involved in this process. I see opportunities here for auditors to be able to really scrutinize. I see opportunities here for economists to be able to measure. Because if programs like this are truly a success, if they're a success all around, and we're able to measure and quantify what these interventions were able to get, then maybe, you know, there'll be more willingness to put more money in those areas where the people can directly feel the impact of government in their lives. I think I'll have to rest it there because basically that's what I see. But in the meantime, I think I will just have to go with the figures that they are telling us, 61 billion for 1.2 million people. That's what they have said, and they say that it's been a success. You talked about how some people refused to pay back the monies and saw it as government largesse, etc. But I can tell you that in the coming days, there still will be questions by a lot of Nigerians as to whether that money was spent for what it really was spent for. Ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely, and that's the way it should be. We'll be back to take you through some of the dailies in a moment. Welcome back. We'll start with Nigerian Tribune today. Terror attacks. End this madness. Buhari orders security forces. Resign if security challenges are overwhelming. CSOs tell Buhari. Governors are Nigeria's problems. Falana. Gunmen invade Imo community, kill 7 security guards. That's the front page of Nigerian Tribune this morning. Then you see all of that, which several questions as to the efforts, the impact. What are we actually doing? How do we stop all of this? So that's the big lead on the front page of Tribune here today. NDLEA busts Burumiri Labs in Lagos. Anambra arrests 2 barons. How we recovered 258.7 kilogram meth precursor chemicals in VGC raid. So you see there, all that glitters is not gold.
I think it was quite a shocker, really, seeing that, especially the one in Lagos, VGC. Thinking, wow. Wait a minute.
So there you go. You need to learn to look beyond a lot of facade you see out there and focus on some of those key issues. Well, Bello shots brothels, bans wearing of face masks in Kogi. And look at the back page, 2022 Commonwealth Games. Onyekure wins 3rd gold for Nigeria as Liadi wins silver. That's Tribune today.
I mean, way to go for Team Nigeria at the Commonwealth Games. We may have dropped from 9th to 10th, but I know we're going to bounce back, especially when we win that next gold and the one after that and the one after the one after that. Anyway, take a look at the front page of this Nigeria this morning. And this is what you find there. Worsening insecurity. We need foreign help, says Buhari. So that's how this Nigeria captions it, saying Nigeria security now a thing of grave concern. Well, for a lot of Nigerians, they say, well, you can say that again. That's from the SGF, by the way. So we have one from the president, the other one from the SGF. This Nigeria is the front page we're looking at right now. And there's a picture, of course, from one of those events yesterday. But looking at just what's under the big picture, this one is from INEC saying over 7 million online CVR applicants failed to complete process. Are you one of the 7 million? Maybe, maybe not. So what happens? What will be their fate? Or what will be your fate? I don't know. More details on page 12. And just one more, something we touched on in terms of businesses, doing business in Nigeria. High cost of diesel killing our businesses. Obasanjo laments. So, I mean, that's not a micro business, really. That's not a small business for the Obasanjo farms, I imagine, and others related. It's a sort of a big business. So imagine what will be happening to the micro. In fact, there's nano businesses in Nigeria, how they're going through all of this. So that's it for the front page of This Nigeria.
And from there, let's move to leadership newspapers this morning. And it has a number of stories that will interest you. Let's start with the big story. Siege on Abuja, military police scale up operations against terrorists. And there's some good news here. But before we get to that, let's look at the start of the riders. Army expands activities to neighboring states. NAF engages to Kano jets. IGP deploys additional policemen in FCT. PMB begs international community for help. Orders service chiefs to end this madness, whatever that means. Another batch of 5 kidnapped train passengers freed. Yeah, that's the pleasant news there. And you can see on the front page of leadership newspapers the 5 travelers released by the terrorists, all male, 5 of them, and they've been narrating their ordeal. Well, we'll get to that much later on, but hopefully during the course of the week. But 2 more stories before we exit the leadership newspapers, and there is one atop the nameplate. Deborah, that's the student that was killed, the Shehu Shagari College in Sokoto. And the story says, I will implement committee's report, attributed to Governor Tambuwa. And, everyone will be watching to see that indeed that report is implemented, considering the way similar, religious killings have been handled in the past. So Nigerians will be watching to see that indeed that is implemented. And lastly, pension fund assets rise by 843 billion naira in H1 2022. That's the leadership newspapers this morning.
Well, Vanguard Newspapers has this. 2023, Lalong Oshomole lead APC campaign team as crisis keeps PDP in limbo. Keyamo Alake Onanuga head media team. Crisis stalls PDP's campaign council. Reconciliation campaign council top agenda as PDP BOT others meet today. Kachiku names Kunu campaign spokesman. So you have all of the details somewhere inside of the paper. It's all politics for you, leading the paper this morning, all towards 2023. The picture there also telling you a story. Buhari receives new Canadian envoy. His name is His Excellency James Christophe, who's seen there presenting his letters of credence. There are a number of other stories here. CVR extension, INEC turns down 70 CSO's requests, says we can no longer extend voters registration. So don't forget, it ended on the 31st of July. That was after it was supposed to have ended on the 30th of June. I think it was a 1-month extension. Looks like there was another request made, but INEC says no. If there's anything you have to commend, though, you have to commend the CSOs and their bid this time around to get as many people as possible registered, cooperating with INEC and also drumming up support for more and more people to get registered ahead of the 2023 elections. You have a number of other stories. 2023, Tinubu's government to be equitable, inclusive. 10 escape as Oyo Amotekun intercept over 150 northerners from Zamfara in Ibadan. So you find the story on page 6. Oil theft responsible for Naira fall, economic woes. That's attributed to Shell. Kidnappers of Nollywood actors reject 1 million Naira ransom offer. They're still in the den of kidnappers. That's such a terrible thing. Page 40 is where you find details. And whilst some are still being kept, train attack, terrorists release 5 more kidnapped victims. That story is on page 6 for you. On the back page, you have Vanguard Sports. They say, incredible lift for Team Nigeria. 19-year-old lifts 216 kilograms, snatches silver It's on the back page. 3 Nigerians qualify for men's 100 meters semis. Lukaku looks good ahead of new season with Inter Milan. So a bit of athletics and a bit of football for you on the back page. Mr. and Mrs. has some advice this morning. Mr. is wondering, is it a sin to be hardworking? My colleagues say it's eye service. And Mrs. says in her own very wise way, so what? If you don't service the eyes of your employer, whose eyes are you going to service? Big question. Well, let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
Well, take a look at the Guardian today. Operational challenges hamper 5G deployment this month. Spectrum trading could be on the card. MTN may spend $28 million on 127 new sites. Targets 5 cities before year end. MAFAB awaits NCC on UASL license, may acquire existing operator. Huawei tasks government on terrestrial fiber deployment for better experiences. 13 African countries in race for 5G deployment. And then high cost of 5G phones could hinder service delivery. Whoa, okay. Quite a lot in the mix right there, I tell you. That is the main big lead on the front page. The Guardian here today.
Well, take a look at daily trusts while you keep your eyes on the 5G. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that, especially so you can be at par with other countries in the world. But the daily trust leads with security. What do I say? Insecurity. Travelers stranded as dollar. No, not insecurity. Forgive me. That's elsewhere, but the lead is on the economy. Travelers stranded as dollar shortage hits banks. I can't access Forex to attend to my health abroad. That's according to a patient. Fake applications are a nightmare. That's coming from banks, and that's something we need to focus on, because there's always a talk about the monetary policies, even the fiscal policies. But what about the citizen policies or the citizen actions? How much is that affecting the dollar shortage? We're tackling the menace that's coming from the CBN. So that's the lead for the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Of course, there's that one, how parody accounts fuel misinformation ahead of 2023 elections. That's right. But yeah, under that one is where you see the story on insecurity. Buhari, no single country can contain insecurity. So some have interpreted that as a call for help. Some others think it's just the usual statement you make when you're in the presence of other countries, just to try to normalize or make your situation seem normal. But let's leave it there for the Daily Trust newspaper.
And let's quickly take a look at Nigerian News Direct this morning. Quite a number of stories, but the big story is, the same way we started off the program with that subject matter on economic sustainability plan. This is the big story. It says, mixed reactions trail FG's disbursement of 66 billion naira to 1.2 million SMEs. We hope that turns out right.
Yeah,
even though we're not quite satisfied with the figures. But let's go above the nameplate. 2023, Tinubu will be fair to all Nigerians. That's attributed to his vice presidential candidate, Alhaji Shetima. A lot of people have been saying, the candidate himself should speak for himself. And Nigerians are waiting to hear from him. All right, just before we leave Nigerian News Direct, one more story that will interest you. 3 more airlines may shut down in 4 months over industry challenges. So if this happens, it will follow the exit from the stage of aero contractors and Dana Airlines. There's a sad narrative there for Nigeria's aviation sector. That's News Direct for you this morning.
Our New Telegraph has this one, Buhari to security forces. You've full freedom to deal with insecurity and the madness. That's New Telegraph for you. Condemns Plateau, Kaduna, Sokoto attacks, assures states of federal government support. Terrorists release 5 more Kaduna train attack victims. How our abductors turned me into the abductor. That's according to a freed victim. Pages 3, 5, and 6 has details. Look at this. ASU strike. Why we adopted voluntary conciliation. That's according to Ingige. The story is on page 3 of the paper. Soyinka Falana back Buhari's impeachment plan is a page 5 read. I recall that report, the Nobel laureate also saying that the governors who also supported something should also be impeached as well. I think you'll have to listen to the report to get the full details of what he was saying. But he was talking about a succession plan and why it's not only the president who ought to be impeached. Page 5 will give you all of the details there. You also see this, manufacturers seek relief as equipment import gulps $5.8 billion. Oh yes, you read right. China takes $4.4 billion lion's share. And if you see this on the corner, Southeast youths to governors, disband Ebubeagu security outfit now. Protest in Aba. And insecurity, Kogi governor bans face masks in public places, shuts down brothels, shanties. Page 6 is where you'll find all of the details. They have a number of other stories just right at the bottom there for you. Former president is speaking. There's also some initiative by the LRS to launch statewide whistleblower initiative. You might want to see the details somewhere inside the New Telegraph. Let's leave it there for the paper.
And that's it with a look at the front pages this morning. But it's a big day on the show. Remember the calls about foreign help, the president telling the security chiefs to end this madness, and all of the security issues across the country. That's what we're starting off with this morning. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. Yes, those two gentlemen will join us as we take a look at some of the developments playing out in the country regarding security. But as you see, let me just go ahead and introduce the guests. Both of them, Honorable Shehu Balarabe Kakale is a member representing Bodinga Dangashinga constituency, Sokoto State. I got some of that right. And then we'll have Brigadier General Jonathan Temlong, OON. He's the first commander, Multinational Joint Task Force. He's the former president, Alumni Association of the National Defense College and Security. Both of them joining us virtually. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, now, let's situate this. Let's take a look at, listen to what the president said about security. This was while he was receiving the envoys of Mexico and Canada.
I urge you to also build friendship and acquaintances in the course of your stay in our country. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the devastating effect of global insecurity, climate change, and the post-coronavirus era has devastated global economies. Nations continue to struggle to recover from these multiple global challenges. The ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine has undermined the progress countries have achieved in tackling food security in the last decade, while the political instability in Libya continues to fuel terrorism in the Sahel, as well as scatter the democratic sustenance in both West and Central African regions. Nigeria is not left out of the equation as we are fighting to rid our country of banditry, kidnapping, harder farmer crisis, and insurgency. We are, however, making meaningful progress with the support of friendly countries like yours to sustain these fights until we overcome these challenges.
President Muhammadu Buhari talking about us making progress in addressing the security challenges facing the country. Let me start with you, Brigadier General Temlong. Give us your assessment, because I mean, you clearly, you've been there, you've done that, you're keeping tabs on what is playing out. His latest directive as well, which we'll focus on. But what's your assessment of how we're addressing this insecurity challenge on our hands?
Well, thank you very much. Our major problem has been that as a nation, we're unable to understand the threats we're dealing with. It appears that the Nigerian citizens and even those in government believe that it is the military and the security agencies that should deal with this situation. We're dealing with a very terrible existential threat, a threat that is asymmetric, a threat that melts within the society. There is no symmetry between the threat and Nigerians. The megad that people have in their houses are informants of these bandits and terrorists. Those who carry water to them as merua are the informants. Those who sell cigarettes are informants, selling drugs to them. They employ machine people, motorcycle people, which they call akada, and send them around. So they are all over within us, and it's something that they don't wear. There is nothing written on their forehead that this is a terrorist or this is a bandit or this is a kidnapper. We wine and dine with them, and if you see some of the serious security breaches that has happened in such a way that, for example, there was an incident here in Bom. They came in there and sat down with them in the drinking parlor. They were buying drinks for them. The people were enjoying them, and these were strange people, not from that community. One of them almost wanted to ask, who are these people? And the other one said, can't you see that they are good guys? They are buying drinks for us. When the time was up, they stepped out, and after about 5 minutes, they were attacked. The same thing happened in Jalingo. Somebody walking with a backpack bought a bottle of beer. After some time, he didn't even drink it, walk out. And when he walked out, the explosion went on. So what we need is an approach that is an all of society approach, an all of government approach. Because this approach has just been left for the security forces and the armed forces alone. It will not succeed in an asymmetric operation. Even in the real war, you need the national will behind you for the armed forces to fight properly. Today, if you see casualties that are set out, the first thing is that people are throwing them all over in the social media without regards to the families and responsibilities of the people that are being killed or being maimed. So it shows as if people are happy when something bad happened to members of the armed forces, security forces. That in itself is demoralizing. So we need to up our game and make it an all of society approach where everybody is involved in fighting these people. They live within us. They don't live off the ground. They buy the food from within us. They get their supplies from us. They buy the fuels that they use in their machines for transportation within us. They buy the motorcycles. They buy the spare parts of the motorcycles from Nigerians. And from, in fact, sometimes our mechanics, they repair their vehicles and repair their motorcycles. So if we don't actually look at this thing and change the approach that everybody is involved in fighting this deadly crime, the crime criminals, then we are going to continue having this problem. There is no magic that the military will do. We further need...
Pardon me. So speaking about changing approach and getting everybody involved, what do you do when residents look at the reporting lines? For instance, if previously they've experienced or haven't reported the matter to a security agency, and it turns out that, well, persons who may have been arrested were released and came back to society to hunt them, or persons came back and released information and said it was this person who gave us information about you, or they see the agencies brutalizing them and that relationship is not there, or perhaps the reporting lines are not well spelled out. There's no number, no emergency number that anyone can call and be guaranteed that they will respond within a certain amount of time. So what do citizens do in that kind of scenario in order for them to participate and be on board, as you suggested?
Well, thank you very much. Not to say that there are no bad acts in the security agencies and the military, but if the citizens take it up upon themselves, in fact, I've seen areas where the citizens insisted and the police chaps were posted out of that place. They have risen up against tyranny by the security agencies. And if the citizens decide to do that, because if there is a known case of somebody reporting, there are multiple channels of reports. I believe that if you report to his DPO, if he's a policeman, I report to his DPO, and it doesn't take any action, you can go up to scale it up to the commissioner of police or even the CP, the high GP. I think what we need to do is that for us to hold the security agencies accountable, and for us to hold them accountable, we too must be accountable. So I think what our advice is that the police high command and all the high commands must make sure that they up the game and fish out those who are bad eggs in their organizations and deal with them appropriately as a means of setting examples to the bad ones. These things come in within the society itself. Sometimes it is we who go back to them and start saying, these are our boys. Why do you want to deal with them? Why do you want to treat them badly? It is the citizens. It is a society, highly placed people. Unfortunately, the politicians go into it because some of those things that they are thugs. So when they are arrested, the next thing is that they go all out to make sure that they are released. So it becomes so much of a burden. But if we accept as a nation that we want to fight it, these people are instrument of state policy. We can actually hold them accountable once we decide to hold ourselves accountable. There is nothing, they cannot be above us. After all, the political leadership, the authority is vested with the civil authority. So if they don't do that and we push pressure on the government and they're not able to rein in those bad acts in the various organizations, then unfortunately we have the good thing about democracy is that we have our voters' cards. They have only a lifespan, after which they must come back to us to renew their tenure. So I think we have to, and thank God, the president has come out now, giving the armed forces and the security agencies a better way, a leeway to deal with them in all ways. That means it has escalated from probably what we had during the civil war. We started with the police action before we went into a full-scale military action. So it has been escalated now. And I think we'll get better results. But we need the citizens, we need the governments to cooperate, the local governments, the state governments, and the federal government and the citizens to be part and parcel of this effort.
All right, well, we'll come back to you so you can shed more light on that particular component of the president's directive. But let me bring in Honorable Kakali on this matter. In context of the president's comments that we're making progress in the scheme of things. So you are in Sokoto, you're also affected. So could you relate it with the president's speech? Are you seeing the kind of progress the president spoke about in Sokoto, for instance, where some attacks also occurred?
Well, first of all, let me correct your pronunciation of my constituency. It's Botenga Dengishuni Traitor Federal Constituency of Sokoto.
I get that. Thank you.
The security situation in Sokoto has improved a little bit. But you know, this attack still is coming on, you know, sporadically, like what in Trota just last week, where bandits were dislodged by security agents when they got information of the attacks and they ran into our local government and villagers were so scared and a lot of them drowned in trying to flee from the bandits. But overall the situation is not getting better. But for my state, particularly for my constituency, I really want to commend the federal government, the armed forces, and of course the state government, the local government, and our communities in what they have been doing over the last few months to improve the situation. I can specifically speak for my constituency, both in the English Theatre. There have been some improvements, deployments of military personnel and their assets, as well as other security agencies, police. They have been doing their best. We have the greater respect for armed forces, for the police and other security agencies, people who put their lives, who put their lives on the line to defend all of us. We feel for them. But the security situation as it is now is terribly, all over the country, is terribly embarrassing, it's unacceptable, and it's the fault of the federal government. In that respect, overall security of the nation, honestly, the federal government has failed to do its duty. The wanton killings, we have been going for burials, open burials, over many years, and we have given, advices and suggestions in multiple quarters and multiple fora. But it's like sometimes they just do as they wish. Everybody, but the people who are in charge, particularly the political class and the executive, know better. They have all the intelligence they need, and they have the resources. But of course, there are still a lot of things where limits of what the security agencies can do. They have said it loud and clear. They need more equipment. They need more personnel. They need technology. But these things are not there. One of the major problems we're having is when the firepower of our security personnel, is at par. That's almost equal to a parallel, or sometimes maybe below what you have with the terrorists. So what do you expect our security personnel to do? We have said it, and we have called on, on the federal government, the executive, to really do more in equipping our security forces, particularly in areas of technology, drones, helicopters, MRAPs, and this ATV. How many of them have you seen deployed? Where are the Tucanos?
Well,
what happened to them?
As a follow-up to that point you made, there's still another point I need to take you up on, but quickly follow up. When you said that, there needs to be more done in terms of equipment and all of that, recall the president's statement just some days back saying he has done, a lot, in fact, even more than is expected of him in terms of morale, equipment, and all of that to support the military. So are you saying essentially that the president still needs to do more than the more that he said he has done?
The president of the federal government needs to do more. Of course, in terms of military budget or the security budget, it has really gone up about 2.5 trillion or so. But as the commander-in-chief, he needs to follow up. Where does the money go? Where are this equipment? If orders have been placed, where are this equipment? Look at the example of Super Tucanos. For how many years? Hundreds of millions of dollars paid, but we don't see them flying. I've never seen a Tucano in Sokoto State, for example, in my constituency, or in operations, real active combat operations anywhere. And they are just lying somewhere, cooling off. And then the protective, heavy duty vehicles. This security personnel complain to us. When sometimes, there's a distress call in the night, they can't go, to such locations of 5, 6, 10 kilometers, particularly, because they will lay ambush at them. It has happened multiply. They call the current vehicles, some of them that are using the Buffalo trucks and other Helios trucks, they call them soft skin, and they just will lay and gun them down. There are these armored vehicles, this mine-resistant ambush protection attack vehicles that they need. If they go to the enclave of these terrorists and bandits and engage them, So I think the only thing left out now are two things, but painfully is either our military personnel with the right equipment and technology go in with the risk of collateral damage, or the government has to negotiate with these people, particularly to release, these innocent Nigerians have been captive for many months, Because these are the only two options left.
Okay, we'll come to that. We'll come to that point, Honourable. By the way, the Super Tucano you talked about, in fact, just on the front page, I think, of the leadership this morning, it's been said that the Air Force engaged the Super Tucano. So the question there will be, just how much do we see that from time to time? What is the frequency? How is it deployed? Is it deployed every time? Perhaps those questions need to be answered as well. But quickly, before I go back to Brigadier General, he made a point earlier on about this all of the society approach, saying that security essentially should be all of the society approach. And coming off, that perspective, I should say, the latest attack we saw in Sokoto, where dozens were killed, would you say that perhaps was a failure of an all of the society approach, maybe not just security, but even the residents, the people themselves, based on the theory that Brigadier General Temlong gave about the all of the society approach?
Some of the comments of the Brigadier General, but I disagree with a lot of others. Why he's saying is, of course, in all of community approach. But what will the community do when bandits are going around and challenge of AK-47 with huge amount of money in their hands? Some of those things he actually said that they are doing, they are coerced and forced to do them. They do them under duress. If you don't do, they kill you. You have to give them information, bring them food. Sometimes they take hostage and even demand for these things. You have to bring them. And what will a private citizen do when he is not armed? He's not trained to. These guys have continuous supply of weapons. They have massive amount of money in their hands. But I think the general should really remember the ransoms they now collect goes into billions. Recently, there's a group that collected almost $1 billion. With $1 billion naira, you can put an informant in almost every door, every village, and pay them huge amounts of money, monthly. Probably pay them more than security agencies, and tell of every movement, every action by any other person. There is no community. A lot of them, of course, there are those, and they are paid for it. Let me tell you this: they are on intelligence network of these bandits and terrorists in some areas, in some locations in this country, are even far organized and much more efficient than that of our security agencies.
Honorable, you said $1 billion naira was paid to one of the groups recently. Who paid them?
$1 billion.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, if you have 10 people paying 100 million and or thereabout, cumulatively, that's almost $1 billion.
All right.
Definitely.
So you're referring to the Abuja-Kaduna train passenger kidnap. Is that what you're referring to?
Imagine what they can do with that money. You can imagine they can deploy it, not only in buying their equipment, but in getting information and information from everywhere, even from within government agencies. I'm telling you. So this thing has been allowed to drag for long, and that's why I've said the default is squarely that of the federal government. And of course, we are all part of it. I am not absolving the National Assembly. We are doing our best, but also our own best is not good enough. We have ways to checkmate and call the executive to order. The National Assembly have those checkmating points and can really make them to sit up and do the needful. The National Assembly has done more than 200, interventions in terms of either motions, bills, reports, and whatever, even a security summit. But the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the executive, most of the times, they don't, adhere to those things. We are supposed to be an independent government, yes, putting a check on the executive, and in some areas interdependent. But honestly, we are all in pain, about what's happening in this country.
Honorable Kakali, I'd like to follow up on that point, but let me just touch base with Brigadier General Temlong briefly. Brigadier, what's different about the tone of the president's current directive when he says to security forces, end this madness? How different is it in tone and intention from what he said earlier to them, that they should wipe out these bandits from the face of the earth? What should we expect from this?
Well, what we should expect is an escalation of the fight, taking it to the terrorists. You can see, just for example, like what the madness that happened around Zuba recently, the troops followed them up into the bush, into the forest, and wiped them out. So I think that directive in itself has escalated the operations itself that they should do. It's further means that then we'll have to commit more resources towards this fight. You see, unfortunately, Nigerians keep saying that we'll spend so much on, yes, rightly so, it has. But go and ask the Americans how much, or you can even Google, how much is a Hellfire missile that was used to kill al-Zawahiri, the Al-Qaeda leader in Afghanistan? 1 and 2 are used. And how much is that drone that was used to do that? So if you put them in millions of dollars, it comes to so many billions of naira for just that asset that was used, just the asset that was used to eliminate that person. And the Honorable rightly pointed out that these people spend so much money on intelligence gathering. And so the only counter to it is for the whole citizens itself to be able to isolate the bad people amongst them. Because government do not have that much money to be spending. The 1 billion, he said they spend so much in the areas. Yes, and if you see those who are doing it for them, you'll be surprised. The last quarter of last year, of 2021, the fourth quarter, about 61 billion naira worth of motorcycles were imported into Nigeria. Who are those using those machines? Where are those new versions? And if we were to track some of this, we should know that there is a higher demand of motorcycles. And Nigerians are crying that they don't have money. So I think these are some of the security indicators for us that these people are not relenting, they are buying more weapons. Why are they upping so much money on ransom? They are using that money to buy weapons. And so if we want to survive as a nation, we have to close our eyes and use more money to buy weapons. And some of these weapons, they're not off the shelf. Some don't come by easily. And that comes to the point that I've been reiterating, that we must use technology as a force multiplier. You can imagine if it were in those days, Americans would have used an airborne or special operation forces, insert them on the ground in Afghanistan before they would take off that al-Zawahiri, the leader. But what they did was technology, which was a force multiplier. Technology, the drone just flew over this thing and fired the Hellfire missile, and lo and behold, eliminated the target. So I think we need more of this, and we can actually get these drones, have eyes in the sky, drones that can fight and take out these leaders wherever they are. Then they will know that there is no place for them to hide. Unless we up this game, unless we are, everybody is prepared to sacrifice for this thing to end. It appears in Nigeria, when they are fighting in Sokoto, those in Calabar will say, oh, it's a Sokoto problem. It's a Nigerian problem. If it's in Maiduguri, those in Badagry will say, let them do their problem there. It is a Nigerian problem.
You know, Brigadier Temlong, when you say that we're already beginning to see results in terms of how they have taken the battle to the terrorists and, there's some form of engagement, one wonders how holistic and, sustained this will be. And I'd like to, follow up on that, but it's time for us to take some messages. We'll take a break. When we return, we'll continue with that aspect of the conversation. Stay with Sunrise Daily. We'll be right back. Yes, indeed. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. And we're still looking at the insecurity situation in the country and how to further tackle it, especially coming off the president's response recently to security agencies, directive rather, that they should end this madness. We also have with us Honorable Shehu Kakali and Brigadier General John Temlong. Thank you, gentlemen, for holding on. So, Brigadier Temlong, I wonder if you saw that report, that we played during the break, and referencing that report, if we consider the intelligence given by the NSCDC, which has been confirmed yet again by a leader in the Southwest. Look at these scenarios. And then the attack on Jos recently, just days ago, where there was intelligence to the effect that the attack was going to happen. And besides that, security operatives within the area withdrew to provide cover for the attackers and also to prevent collateral damage on their part. Now, if you consider the president's directive likened to this one in recent times, that if anyone is seen with an AK-47 rifle, the person should be shot on sight. So how holistic is this response and how sustained will it be if you consider that the insurgency is moving further down south without any visible results on the highways to deter any form of attack?
Well, in the first place, even you yourself does not look optimistic because you look pessimistic. You see, and that's what demoralizes the troops because they want the will behind them. Because the way you are asking, you are saying how sustained will the effort in Abuja be or all over the place. We must be optimistic and we must give support and good kudos to them what they were doing. They are operating in very difficult conditions. And you see, sometimes the news that you get are not the correct news because they are news that are sensational. Listen to the other side of the story too, because I think the military or the security forces will give you their own side of the story too, because when you give an information, it's different from intelligence. If you tell me that people are coming to attack Jos, who are those coming to attack Jos? What is their strength? What weapon? Is it the whole of Jos they are going to attack? Where are they coming from? What is their likely strength? You know, what time are they likely to do this? These are the whole thing that make up intelligence. But when you just say people are coming to attack, 10 days, nobody has come, and you deploy troops to that area, there are other competing areas and demands that require the presence of troops. So people say that they withdraw troops. It's not that. Not that they withdraw troops, but when you start crying foul, and when there is no foul, or you start saying that there's lion, and there's no lion. By the time there's a real lion comes and you shout lion, nobody is there. So I think we need to look at this thing holistically. We need to support these people and appreciate the efforts, the conditions under which they're operating. I think the good thing is that I will recommend to the Chief of Defense Staff that they should invite some of you anchors and embed you with the troops to go into this forest, at least for 24 hours. And when you come back, you will understand the situation they are talking about. And that means your reportage will be such a way that will start giving meaning and setting a narrative that will be supportive of the operations. We're not saying that you should support them fully when they are not doing the right thing. When they are doing the wrong thing, expose them, report them to the high command, expose them to the court of public opinion. But once they are doing good,
Brigadier,
well done.
Security is not the job of a broadcast journalist. And besides, you say that they're crying wolf where there is none. But intelligence was provided before the Kuje attack on the Kuje Correctional Center. In fact, it has now emerged to be that 44 intelligence reports was given, but nothing was done about it.
Well, look, the president has set up a committee, and I'm sure the DSS will bring out those 44 intelligence reports that the deputy speaker spoke about. And it will show whether that intelligence are actionable intelligence, real-time intelligence, or intelligence of general nature. So I think that will be left for the Mr. President to be able to do that. And I'm sure those who are culpable will be dealt with, definitely. And you have even heard recently, it's in the public domain, that about four informants have been arrested who facilitated the attack on Kuje prison. So are those informants members of the Boko Haram or the bandits? Well, we don't know who they are, but I'm sure we have gotten so much too from the informants. So I believe that that's the good thing about the intelligence, because you compartmentalize intelligence so that you don't compromise it. So that's why you have multiple intelligence agencies. The DSS are giving intelligence, the CDI or the DIA are giving out intelligence too, and the various security services have their own intelligence branch too. So you don't compromise the intelligence. What might be an intelligence from one source might not be an intelligence in the other one. So I believe that a comprehensive package, when this is analyzed and reported, will know whether those intelligence that were given were actionable intelligence, real-time intelligence, or intelligence of general nature.
Okay, so whilst the general public will need to be schooled on this, what should you gave some examples at the beginning of this conversation. You talked about how people went to drink in a place and people noticed that they looked quite different, and they didn't quite raise an alarm about it, and in no time they were victims of attacks. In that situation, what would you have had the residents do? Because we've noticed there have been many stories of these types of examples given, even in the Kuje attack. We understand that the farmers around Karishi had gone to tell security agencies that they had seen strange movements around there. What would you make of the kind of reports when citizens give this sort of information to security agencies?
Well, you have seen where citizens themselves have risen against even the government, let alone the security agencies. But what needs to be done in our case is that we need to build the capacity of our citizens to be able to pick up items of intelligence, items that are relevant to people, and they'll be able to report or sometimes hold them. I'll give you an example. The Christmas Eve bombing in Jos, I think it was 2009 or 2010, the Merua people just push water, the truck pushers of water, took them to a place. They had the bombs inside, the IEDs inside the trucks and the water. They just left them there along the road and started walking away. In a normal situation where the people are security conscious, they would have held them and said, where are you people going to? They would have held them. And after holding them, they would have been able to be interrogated of this thing. There are cases here, I've seen it.
What I seem to hear you say, General, is that you want citizens to be able to perform citizens' arrest. You want them to go beyond reporting. Is that what you're asking for?
You have said citizens arrest. It's not allowed by our constitution, by our laws. It means that there are citizens arrest. Citizens must do what they're supposed to do to protect them. The first law of survival is self-preservation. Unless you are alive, all other things is useless on this side of the divide. So citizens must even be able to do citizens arrest. It's allowed by law. So why are we saying we cannot do what is allowed by the Nigerian laws? We must build the capacity of our citizens
usually degenerate when it comes to citizens arrest. Before you know what's happening, you also have a situation of jungle justice. And sometimes these things happen based on suspicion. It's not like as if there's been a court of law involved in these matters. Do you not fear that angle also coming in, or people just beginning to get paranoid, acting on their instincts and doing what they ought not to do?
Listen, I said you should build their capacity, and building capacity includes training. Okay? So it's not a matter of just people just behaving the way they want to behave. I was in this country in the 60s. I was young, old enough to understand that citizens were doing what was right. In fact, one single policeman, native authority policeman, will go into a village and blow his whistle, and the citizens will come out and help him in effecting an arrest. I saw this. Citizens were even arresting people who did wrong and brought them before the chiefs or the security. So I think we need to go back to the crossroads. It's not something that, you see, why are people taking laws into their hands? It's frustration. Because the criminal justice system has been so weak. And so if we don't actually force people to do what they're supposed to do and allow the criminals to reign over us, then these things will continue. But once the good people, who should be more in number, are able to stand up to these criminals, we will defeat them even without firing a single shot. I mean, in a community, you see somebody who has no work because he's an informant of the bandits or terrorists. He spends so much money, he's living a life beyond his income, and nobody questions him, and nobody asks what questions, how is he coming about this money? And then the next thing is that strange people come to him in and out, he facilitates movement here and there, and the next thing is that the whole community is attacked, people are killed, or they go to a particular house and kidnap people for ransom because that person is going to do. I think we have to stop this madness. It is Nigerians themselves who stop this madness. We can't continue or allow.
It is how to stop it that we're talking to you about, General. I also want you to look at the response time of our security agencies in certain situations. Do you think that we're asking enough questions in that area?
Thank you very much about response time. I think it is a problem that even governance is a governance issue. The government, like the police, a governor should sit down with the police commissioner and ask him, I want a 5 minutes response time within the Jos metropolis, like for instance here. The police commissioner will go and work out the logistics and tell him that, look, if you want a 5 minutes response time, I will need this sort of vehicles, I will need these communication gadgets, I will need this. The medics will sit down and tell him, look, for us to be able to respond within 5 minutes and give you this, these things are done holistically. You just don't sit down and say you did a response time. Give me an example. In a local government, you have one vehicle provided by the local government to the police, or two, and you want a 10 minutes or 15 minutes response time. I think we're kidding. And then you have the numbers that are available there are not there. And that's why I say, for us to build up the numbers, we still need technology as a force multiplier, because it will take you some number of years to train, number of months to train a policeman. It will take you a number of months to train a soldier. And it will take him some 1 or 2 years to acquire experience to be able to face bullets. But you can deploy technology within months, and that technology will be a force multiplier and do what 100 soldiers can do for you, one item. And so we can do what 100 policemen can do for you, one item. So you definitely need the whole response time have a lot of parameters around it. It's not just because they are not being able to respond. They don't just have the capacity and capability to respond within the period that we expect. Now, we must build that capacity and capability for them to respond. And while they don't do it, you hold them responsible, because if the commissioner or even the military man tells you that for me to give you a 5 minutes response time, I need this, and if you give him that and he's not able to provide that 5 minutes response time, you can sanction him. You have all the morals, courage, and right to deal with him the way he's supposed to be dealt with.
That raises more questions, but Honorable Kakali, let's bring you in. Given that directive by the president that is giving them unfettered, unhindered directive to go all out and end all of this, what would you expect moving forward?
What number of directives? We have seen such directives before, countless number of them. They have no effect. With due respect, let me tell you that. Because even Nigerians, have really found, do not take presidential directives seriously any longer. And let me go back to what the general said about in the 60s, in the good old days when police go into a village, whistle, and then citizens help. But that was when the security system was decentralized. That was when the traditional institution had a role to play in security. But not now, when we have an over-centralized system where everything has to come from Abuja. And I had him saying that local government chairman or the governors should buy vehicles. Yeah, they do, but I want to remind him that the police is under the exclusive legislative list in the Constitution. It's squarely, the function of the federal government of Nigeria. That's one of the problems we have with this country. We have a constitution that is analog, that is not working for us. And I believe, with the calls from many quarters, we need to really do a deep dive into amending the Nigerian constitution. For example, I support state police. all crimes are local, and their solutions are also local. You can't be sitting in Abuja and say you want to appropriate security in Tureta and Dengishu or Bodinga. It has not worked. For the past 10, 20 years, it's very obvious where we want to see. And the asymmetrical warfare too that has been talked about. Yes, non-conventional and asymmetrical warfare between the bandits and the then also military should also go asymmetrical. If these people can mobilize within no time to get and go and to get equipment and no matter how equipment and go and attack and perpetrate heinous crimes.
Honorable, these perspectives that you've given, there's so many out there who are equally frustrated with what is going on. But you are in the House, you are in the ruling party, you feel this way, and there are several of you who feel that way. But how do you then, why is it that there are several other colleagues of yours who don't feel this way? They seem to perhaps look the other way and don't see a need to support what you suggested. Go for state police, reorganize the policing architecture or security architecture in this country so that we can get results, because these threats, they don't distinguish between whatsoever. Why is this the case?
See, I think it's ultra-partisanship. Honestly, some of us really see allegiance to their party more than to their country. And the commander-in-chief himself do not support state police, and probably they tend to align with that position. But I think we need to tell the president, President Muhammadu Buhari, and commander-in-chief of the armed forces to really look, deeper into the need for state police. In the early days of Nigeria, there were regional police, there are local government police, community police. And of course, there are issues and conversations about, they are being misused either by political interests, religious interests, or ethnic interests. That can be addressed. Let's sit down and see how best to, and take models that can work for us. But a situation where a commissioner of police, as the general said, for example, in the state, he gives an itinerary of what he needs for operation and have short response time. And then the governor provides that, to that commissioner of police. And the next thing, he's posted out. And or even for the response time, he will tell him that he will need to take orders or direction from Abuja. What kind of thing is this? See, we are neighboring Niger Republic. This state that is close to alien local government. One of their governors in Niger Republic was shocked to learn that in Nigeria, governors cannot give commands directly, express commands to police commissioners and even to commanders in the field. So in my state, for example, over 500 vehicles, motorbikes, and a lot of other assets and logistics of hundreds of millions of naira have been given to security agencies, and they are doing their best. Honestly, we appreciate what they are doing in Sokoto State, but they are overwhelmed. They are out. And they sometimes their morale is down. The issue of community policing in the federal government, in the police 2020 Police Act, where the recruitments were made, the federal government have not been able to pay. They have not been paid up till now.
Well, Honorable Kakali, clearly there's so much to talk about, and so we'll have to revisit this matter at a later date because we're completely out of time. But just quickly, Brigadier General Tamlong, before you go, if you could do this as quick as possible, we'll appreciate it. In context of what Honorable has said about, we've heard these directives before, you also have said the capacity may not necessarily be there. When we ask, what do we then expect of the military, given this fresh directive by the president? How should we proceed with this? What do we expect, we have to ask?
Well, we expect to see the military up their game within the limit of resource control constraints. They should change their rules of engagement. We will see probably them asking for the required equipment and arms and technology that they will require to effectively fight this. And I expect that the National Assembly will give the backing for the president to expend these resources, and Nigerians should give more will. The national will should be behind the armed forces, and the security agencies to be able to do what they're supposed to do.
All right.
And we are supposed to be involved as citizens. I need to see the governors, the local government chairmen, the traditional rulers, the community leaders, and everybody upping the game to get an all-of-society approach to the fight against these criminalities in this country.
All right,
we want to see too that the criminal justice system will live up to its responsibility, and for us to be able to fish out the bad eggs too. I think Nigerians will need.
We have to go.
Nigerians need to fight this thing.
Brigadier General John Tamlong is the first commander, multinational joint task force. That's the MNJTF. He's also former president, alumni association of the National Defense College and Security. We've also had the pleasure of Honorable Shehu Kakale, who joined us. Both of them joined us virtually. But gentlemen, the segment may have been over, but this subject matter is not over, because can we continue to do the same things and expect a different result? Your guess is as good as mine. We will be back in just a moment. Don't go away.
Well, that's precisely what we're talking about. INEC has released a summary of the voter registration exercise, pretty detailed one, and also with pictures to vote. Well, we have with us this morning Madam Ene Obi, who is the convener of the Situation Room and also the country director of Action Aid. Ma'am, you're welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well,
good morning, Nigerians.
Good morning. Well, part of the headlines which we saw this morning while reviewing the papers was this CVR extension. INEC turns down 70 CESO's request, says we can no longer extend voter registration. I do not know if your CSO was a part of this coalition asking for an extension, but this is what INEC is saying. How are you seeing this response?
We have made a request. We have asked the INEC chairman to discuss with the team and extend the voter registration, the continuous voter registration. Mm-hmm. There are a number of reasons why we are asking for this. The fact that, there was a spike after the primaries. I think the primaries told Nigerians a lot of things, that the politicians are not really, having, a lot of them don't have your intentions at heart. The quest for power is so deep. And now that, there is beginning to be a lot of work on the electronic, the outcome of the Electoral Act 2022, is a plus because of the electronic systems. The beavers, the machine that is being used now, the card reader, when we had the card reader, there was a lot of ways that they discarded it because they said it was illegal and so on and so forth. And now we have the electronic system that is now legal. So people are beginning to believe that the votes will count. Mm-hmm. We are coming from, off-cycle elections. But even before that, the primaries showed Nigerians that unless they stand up, we cannot deepen democracy. Mm-hmm. Our future is indeed in their need that active citizenship is very, very important, and that your votes will count. If you realize that your votes will count, you go and vote.
Some people
before now, they were not believing it.
That's one way of looking at it. But I mean, if we're to go by what we have seen with all manner of registrations which government carries out, not just INEC now, is it with NIN? Is it when we begin to hear of the deadline drawing closer, that we begin to see people realizing that, oh my God, there's no more time, and then they begin to rush out to vote.
I think...
or to get registered or to do whatever.
Much as I want to listen to that, much as I want to say, yes, maybe there was a some time that Nigerians were not serious. There was, delays for people going to, taking it not quite easy. Mm-hmm. But I think you and I know that spike made people to the point that people will go to the national, the Tafawa Balewa Square, where you have everywhere that is filled up. INEC tried to respond by deploying more machines into the area. And so many other people. There are so many young Nigerians who don't believe in the nation anymore because of the issues of unemployment, because of the issues of, the school issue. ASU has been on strike. Who is talking to them? Mm-hmm. We are not addressing the youth, which is the engine room for Nigeria, for development in Nigeria. And so our outcry is that the interest has been generated because even at that time that the CVR was on, how much of education, public education was carried on to tell people that this was going on. At the heat of it, a lot of civil society organizations tried to make noise. What was the response from National Orientation Agency? Because National Orientation Agency is not as funded as INEC, nobody is giving that way direction because they are the ones that are doing civic education. It's a crop of political scientists who are in all of the local government areas. But are they funded to do the job? What is the content of the civic education that went on throughout the times that we have been going to, even at the off-cycle election? The off-cycle election, they are giving positive registration, numbers. Now it's coming out of Anambra State. When we went for Anambra election, we know what happened there. How many people really voted in Anambra State? If you're now moving from Anambra, we came to FCT. Even the CVR, the beavers failed woefully in many places because of the either deployment or issues that were critical. And when we went to INEC, we tried to address it. We moved from there and went to Ekiti. Ekiti, politicians decided to be bribing people because they now know that you have to talk to people. The power has gone to the people. You have to talk to people to convince them before they go and cast their vote.
Yeah, but
if
in
not
terms of
now,
the turnout, we
also moved to Osun State.
Yes.
Osun had more, and beavers worked, almost perfectly. What that is meaning also is telling Nigerians, look, your vote is going to count. So go and get yourself registered. And I think we need to mobilize more. The Electoral Act gives them time to continue registration until 90 days to the time. But we are not asking them to even reach that 90 days, but extend it for the next 2. If people are activated, more or less, people are enthused. I know how a lot of people struggled to the very last minute and they were not able to register.
Let's take a look at
the queues are there, much as you can. They can also, a lot of people want to volunteer. If INEC is looking for workers, people can volunteer, and I know that many people also try to help, in the registration process.
Let's look at the figures as released by INEC. The first, the first slide there showing the weekly update online voter registration, and I think that first one was as at 7 a.m. on Monday, the 1st of August, showing that pre-registration statistics by states. Fresh registrants only showed about 10,487,972 people. There was a breakdown done by states. I think Lagos had a pretty high figure of 639,882. We also see, I think you'll be there, or Kebbi, with the lowest number of people who are registered with 80,733. There, that's the slide showing on there for our viewers. We also have the weekly update, online voter registration, showing age group, occupational, gender, and PWD statistics. There's a distribution by age group there. Youths forming the highest number of people, 18,196,782. That's youths, people between the ages of 18 to 34, according to INEC here. It's very important to clarify. Yeah, we also see middle-aged people, 35 to 49, 8,630,903. Elderly people between the ages of 50 to 69, 3,795,765. And old, classified as 70 and above, 474,563. They also do a distribution by occupation, maybe to give a clearer picture. They have artisans, businessmen, civil servants, trading, housewife, farming, fishing, public servant, students, others not specified. I think though they have the largest chunk at 7,608,877. But it shows that these number of people try to register online, 31 million of them, 98,013 people participated in the online voter registration. But I think the disparity now is when you look at the total number of people who were able to complete their registration. And I think this is what is disturbing for a number of people, that 31 million plus did the registration online. But at the end of the day, only 12,298,944 people were able to successfully complete their registration. They first of all showed a breakdown by state. So by state, you can see where each state falls into there. I think they ought to have released the codes as to what the color coding was about, but I've been trying to see if I can see a trend across the color code. Maybe it's across what they call that now, geopolitical zones. So for the different geopolitical zones, you can see the color coding there: northeast, northwest, north central, southwest, southeast, and south-south. And then if you look at the breakdown by age group and also by occupation, you also see that youths also constitute the highest number at 8,784,677. So total number of those who are able to complete their registration is at 12,298,944. We just got news this morning that SERAP, Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project, say they will be suing INEC for completing or for closing registration and depriving the difference between the people who started registration online and the people who were able to complete their registration. I think there's a difference of about 11 million people there. They say for closing the portal in such a way that those remaining 11 million people are unable to successfully complete their registration. Do you think that is stretching it too far?
It's not a matter of stretching it too far. I think their cry is a cry of the civil society as well, that you are looking at your 11 million citizens. Can you then tell us how? How did they not get to register? Were they not able to? Will you not be concerned on why or how they have not been able to register, to complete their registration? I think that's a source of concern for us.
I'm concerned, but I mean, that's one also who also tried to complete I started the registration online. I mean, I was already registered previously. I wanted to be able to move my polling unit, etc. Yes. And I was told, oh, you could do it online, start online. So I went online and I started the process. I was able to successfully get to some conclusion where some numbers were generated, and all I had to do was take it to a polling center or a registration center to complete the process. But I just couldn't find the time. Would that be
You see what you're talking about? It is not because you couldn't find the time. You know that if you go, you can't stay on the queue because the queue is so long. If you knew that if you get to the registration point, you can easily do it, you will not just stay away from it. You go and complete it. But what we are raising up here is that there were so many of them that have finished their online registration and they were on the queue and they were not able to register. This is a cry from all over the country. The situation room tried to mop up, there were a lot of people into the night of Saturday, into the night of Sunday. People were on the queue and everything closed. And we are not saying that it's not overwhelming that we are having a huge population, but we all need to think back. INEC itself needs to see how much of voter education was carried out.
But if you look
into the people.
If you look at what
will 2 months, what will it do to hurt people?
If you look at just how much effort INEC has also put into this to, increase the credibility of the process, which is extremely important and which is what actually boosts the confidence of the voting population.
Exactly.
And even the current process that they're using, before now, I think it was shut down and they said they have to clean the register, they have to apply a fix, etc., etc.
They said that.
Yes. Are we being too demanding, knowing the technological demands that could also be making of INEC members of staff and perhaps the resources that they have at their control?
You see, resources out of their control, we wouldn't know how much resources they have. Money, according to the Electoral Act, 1 year to the election, all the money should have been given to INEC. But we don't know what they have now, so they won't declare that to civil society. But we are saying if that is a constraint, then let the government give them all the money that they need.
Is it just about money, but also about...
That's one. The other side of it is, yes, we acknowledge INEC. We appreciated, the way Osun election went, the Ekiti election went. Beavers is now working. The interaction with the civil society, with the political parties, with the security agencies, they are really interacting, and we commend them for that. They are making progress. That's why Nigerians are now believing in the system. And so if there is a turnaround now, it means we need to re-energize the system to respond to the needs of the people, to deepen democracy. I think is a good thing if people are interested in what they're doing. And the Electoral Act is very clear that registration, going into 90 days, you can stop it 90 days to the time. But we do understand what they're saying. They want to clean up. They want to put the voter registration, the list out so that people can identify their names, and also the repopulation of the polling units. But this is a quest, and this is legal for us to ask and say, you need to continue the registration, because if you are closing the door on so many people, one of the rules that INEC has maintained, which has been very good, is that if you get to the polling unit before 2 p.m., all of you on that queue, you will vote. Some people have voted until about 2 a.m. They voted and their votes counted. But now we are having the door closed on people while we know that they can register. And so if you are disenfranchising, we are not even talking of those who are still outside now, but about 11 million people not being able to complete their registration. I have people who complain that I have done my registration, but the queue, do you know anybody? I am telling you that a lot of people who got the last registration is because they knew someone who knew someone in INEC, and so on and so forth. And that's not the way we want them to. We are encouraging them. As we are making our demand, we are not forcing them, but we are encouraging, and we are asking before INEC chairman, even this morning through your medium, that we need this to be reopened. You remember that, before Osun Ekiti election, 60 days to the time, their own was closed.
Okay.
CVR was not there. 60 days to the time of Osun as well, nobody could register again. And now, when you open the system, it means you allow all those who have been left behind.
Indeed.
I think it's to encourage Nigerians that we're telling them to reopen the portal.
Okay, let's take this conversation now to my colleagues in Lagos. Ladies and gentlemen.
Well, quite an interesting conversation, really, especially for those who have been waiting on queues, going online, and just trying to ensure they get their PVCs. And now, it has closed. Questions about whether or not it will be postponed and all of that. In fact, questions about whether people have to go through that whole process to be able to perform, their right as, a citizen of Nigeria, have to cross that barrier. When naturally, if you're born Nigerian, you should be able to do all of that. But I'd like us to talk about even another important conversation, which is election management itself, because it's not enough for you to register. There is an organization, INEC, that will manage that election, and then we have questions about the recs that have been nominated, the recs that are going out. Just how competent are the new recs? Are there concerns about changing the team just a few months to the tournament itself, when we've had a team that has done some work? How competent are the new players coming in? I'm talking about the recs appointed and all of that. For the civil society, do you have those concerns as well?
Yes, we have concerns. We have our concerns because we're looking at names coming up, names that have not been heard in the electoral, processes before. We're having new names that are coming. We were quite worried about this, and we mentioned it. We reacted to it a couple of months ago that 2023 is just way down, is just around the corner, and we are now having new people that we have to do orientation from. That worries us. Another one is how independent are those new, nominees, and that's why we are urging the parliament to look at them, scrutinize them very well, and see where they are coming from, whether they, they are the issues of partisan politics, where we are, whether they are independent enough to be able to deliver. Are they competent enough to be able to deliver? The responsibility of a rec is a huge responsibility. And so for us, we worry about them because we don't know, many of them we don't know. And all we hear is that some of them, yes, they were nominated, relations of people, and people have to be related to people. But how detached are they for the politicians? Because if you are with a political party or you are attached to a politician, it means you will do the bid of the politician when you get there. So we are worried about the competence, but we'll be watching them. And we are going to monitor the elections across the country, whoever is getting there. We'll also be watching the parliament as they clear them. We'll be watching them, whether the body language of whatever, and we are going to also be tracking those who are going in as reps. So we encourage them to try and stay firm and do something for Nigeria. Those who are in the parliament today, some of them are there now, they may not be there tomorrow. So do the right thing, stand upright for Nigeria, and tell the truth and stand for the truth before it is too late for you. Because once you exit the stage, you are out.
Mrs. Obi, their competence may not
do nothing anymore.
Mrs. Obi, their competence may not be in doubt, but you talk about independence. Let's take a look at a few names. Mrs. Pauline Onyeka led the state's Independent Electoral Commission in Imo State. Professor Salam Ayobami was a lecturer in a federal-owned university, and Ambassador Abdul Samadu has some engagement with the Kaduna state government, even though he's a country representative of the United Nations. If you doubt the independence of these individuals, just to mention a few of them, how far would you be taking your engagement with Parliament to ensure that the independence of these individuals can be ascertained so that the integrity of the elections will be guaranteed?
I think each of them, they have their resume. So let their resume be very clear to the members who are going to scrutinize them. That's what we're saying. Let them open their eyes to what they are bringing on board. A number of them, you find there are about 17 or so of them. So you cannot depend on the 3 people that have been nominated. But what we are watching for, we are not condemning who has submitted a list, but we are saying let them be people who will be non-partisan to deliver, their responsibilities. Yeah, because it's not a child's play. If you cannot disengage yourself from what is happening, a lot is going to happen.
But can you be non-partisan if, for instance, you're nominated by the governor or you're a relative of, a high-ranking political party member? Would you expect partisanship from such persons?
My fellow compatriot, that's the point that we are bringing on board. If you are nominated by the governor, and normally, the REC, they don't post you to the states where you come from. Most of the time, they don't post you to the states where you come from. So you can be nominated by a governor and they post you to somewhere else. If you have the competence, go ahead. But if you become partisan, we will also know by your own actions and by the things that you do. Because most of the time, it's the governors, they ask for the states to put their nominations, and so they are nominating. We do agree that governors can talk to governors. But we are asking, and to deepen democracy requires active citizenship. It requires the activities of all of us, and not just those who are on the seat, but those who are, the citizens themselves, who are going to be the voters at this time. And so we are asking the system, if the system is working, it's very, very tough for anybody to bend it. But we are calling on people to try to stand up right for Nigeria, for us to be able to deepen the democratic values, the processes that will go through the values, to make it easier for Nigerians to be able to deliver, and to make it easier for INEC too, because you have the national commissioners for INEC, and then you have the REC. If their allegiance is not to Nigeria and to individuals, how do they deliver? And that will show. One of the things is that it will show. For all the security agencies, if you are not delivering, it will also show. Everybody is writing their own, you are writing your history by your actions, because what you do today will account for you tomorrow. And so all of that is taken into consideration, and I hope that people are, people are listening, people are also rededicating themselves to Nigeria. You say, I pledge to Nigeria, my country, and all of them are going to take this pledge, to be faithful, loyal, and honest. How many of us are checking ourselves there? How many of the politicians are living the life of Nigerians, of patriotic Nigerians? You say, arise, O compatriot. It's each and every one of us, whether you are on one side or the other side, whether you are occupying any position. I'm a civil society person. And where I'm occupying, I'm using it to work and stand upright for Nigeria. And we are demanding that out of everybody, Wherever you are, contribute your own quota. If not, the chapter will close and you get out of the world as well too.
Well, it's certainly food for thought this morning. To whom does your allegiance lie? We thank you so much for your time and the work that you do. NAOB is the convener of the Situation Room and also country director of Action Aid. Well, that's where we'll have to leave the conversation this morning. I'm trying to see if we have any comments. Guys, do you want to tell us about your experience in getting registered for these? Oh, yes, I'm seeing one there, even though I can't see it here with me, but look at it. CSO on voter registration says the civil society organizations should cut INEC some slack, please. Their vociferous demands on INEC continuing with voter registration is tending towards destabilization. We have over 96.2 million registered voters already. That's the size of some 5 countries in Europe. And how many people get to vote in any past elections anyways? There's always some other time, please. Circumspection. This is from Abiodun Akinjayeju.
Is he willing to wait?
Well, that's a meal. We thank you so much for your time. Any more? Do we still have time for more?
Absolutely. Got a lot of them. Take a look at this one from Law Alpha Cross. By the way, questions and reactions to that one from Abiodun. But Law Alpha Cross says, INEC should take into cognizance the spirit and enthusiasm expressed by Nigerians to be part of the electoral process by extending the severe exercise. There's still plenty of time to do the extension ahead of next year's general election. So different strokes for different folks.
Speaking of which, for First Sakimboyewa, Insecurity is at the heart of the matter. And he says, every day we're heartbroken by the news of another killing of innocent Nigerians by terrorists. And I don't think Nigerians believe there's progress. We want our president to do everything in his power to keep these tragedies from happening in our country, period.
Or Victor says, man to man is so unjust. If citizens see and speak and the information given to security apparatus gets back to the terrorists, putting their lives at risk, would they want to speak up? These are serious issues, he says.
And lastly, this one from Dr. Ekmemosa says, there are too many ungoverned spaces within and around Nigeria. These spaces have been left to fallow for so long that alternative governance structures emerged and now pose resistance to legitimate governments. What to do about that? Well, thank you so much for sending in your comments this morning and your contributions as well.
Perhaps we should govern that little space around us well, at work, at homes, wherever we find ourselves. Let's ensure we do the right things. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Yeah, let's be vigilant, especially in these difficult times. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
And I am Chamberlain, so goodbye.